Hey everyone, Social Solipsist here for another episode of 52 and 52, and this is the last episode of the year, episode 52. I am pretty excited that I made it a full year, doing one of these every single week, and I'm going to continue to do them. But for this week, we're going to take a look at Endless Legend. I saved this one for the end of the series, partially intentionally and partially unintentionally. Part of it is because it's a 4X game, and I really, really like the 4X genre, but it is a very in-depth genre that takes a lot of time to learn, a lot of time to get good and understand all of the mechanics and how they interact with each other, all of the nuances. So I fundamentally didn't want to, rush a video out on it. But likewise, or in the same sort of vein, my opinions on it have changed a little bit as I've gone through it. I started out very, very excited and mellowed a little bit, but I'll get into that a little bit more once I actually start talking about the game. So yeah, I saved it for the end of the series so that it could kind of truncate the year and round out all of these reviews. And for once, I've actually written a bit of an outline for how I want this to be read off, partially because I've tried to record this video or a voiceover for this game probably somewhere between a half dozen and a dozen different times. Many drafts that have been thrown in the bin. So without further ado, let's see if I can get through this succinctly. So it is a 4X game. Endless Legend is a 4X game, as I mentioned. This is not the first 4X game that's been published by Iceberg, but it is probably their finest entry to date. Graphically, it is really an incredible looking game. It's a few years old at this point, but both in style and performance, the graphics are pretty incredible. All of the designs are very unique. The animations are great. The variety of colors that are used, and the differences in terms of various units, various factions, various heroes, things like that, are all articulated really well in the visual style. You can almost immediately figure out what you're looking at based on the diverse way they show the diverse designs that they use. Each of the factions really has a unique design to it. And so you can really quickly, identify what you're looking at and go from there. Performance-wise, even on my fairly beefy but a little bit old computer, it is pretty darn heavy. So I do have to turn some of the settings down. I can't run it at max. I usually run it in a window, honestly, at 1600 by 900, just because for some reason it seems to perform significantly better, even though it's only a little bit fewer pixels than the native 1080p. But overall, I can't really complain about the performance that much, especially given it's still a fairly new game. In terms of being a PC game, it's got more than enough, graphical and audio and control settings for you to choose from. To make it's obviously not a port from any other system, but that doesn't mean that there aren't plenty of PC games that are lacking in the settings department. So on that front, it really hits all cylinders, and it's solid even on a low powered system. I'm able to run it if I really want to. Gameplay wise, there's a lot of really innovative things that they've done, a lot of quality of life stuff that they've done in this game that has not always been the case in the 4X genre. The complexity of the 4X genre, I think, typically lends itself to being very obtuse, and mitigating some of that obtuseness is, I think, very key in getting somebody to adopt a new 4X or even get into the 4X genre to begin with. I know my friend Colibacter picked it up and played it a bit with us, and not being somewhat new to the 4X genre, she didn't really struggle much at all to, to identify all of the things, all the necessary things, and read the UI. There's a lot of 4Xs out there where if you handed it to somebody who wasn't familiar with the genre, they would run away screaming. But on that front, they do a very good job of presenting the information in a simplified and well thought out manner. In terms of the actual gameplay, the first and foremost is that it's almost wholly controlled by the mouse. You reach for your keyboard once every 15 minutes, maybe. All of the controls are done over mouse, and that really speaks to their kind of laser focus on getting the user control down perfectly. In terms of design aspects compared to other 4Xs, they've done a lot of simplification in terms of things like economic control and governance of your population. And that's really another big credit to them, because they make it deep without having to make it too broad. They simplify a lot of the things that typical 4Xs might overwhelm you with, down to a few simple economic factors, a few resources. And then as you get further into the game, it slowly opens up just by its very nature as a 4X, as your civilization evolves, and you have to take up more and more things, but at a very reasonable pace in terms of things like resource management, luxury management, those sorts of things. There's a lot of other design innovations that I think are, at least some of them are really good, and some of them are good in theory. Adding seasonal effects to a 4X is a really interesting idea. There's a summer and winter cycle that passes through the world, and winter has a lot of negative effects on the world that make it harder to move, harder to gather resources. These are hard winters on whatever extraterrestrial planet this is, and adding that kind of you have to plan ahead for winter, and I think that's a really interesting addition to a 4X that I really haven't seen before. Another difference from a lot of 4Xs is the way they handle districts and the regions that cities inhabit, because I'm not going to get too much into the specifics of the game, since I'm hoping some of you will pick it up anyway and take a look at it. And if you look at the footage here, you should get some sort of sense of what's going on, though it is late game footage. Cities are tied to a region. If you build a city in a region, it's the only city that can be built in that region. And you expand your city through typical, building of utilities and things like that, but also through expanding your districts. This is something that Civilization 6 has been, as a much newer game, has also adopted. But at the time this came out, I'm not really aware of many, if any, other 4Xs that really made use of an extended districting system that lets you expand a single city in the same sort of way as this. Likewise, in those regions, there are minor factions that you have to befriend, and contrary to something like Civilization 5, where ignoring the city-states is a mostly viable option, the minor factions are really the key to the entire game. You take quests from them, you become allies. If you don't become allies, they start sending armies against you, so on and so forth. So it's really an undertaking to take a new region and to to settle a city, to expand a city, to pacify the locals, to incorporate them into your civilization, so on and so forth. And the level of detail that they've put into that is really admirable. Again, it's not 100% perfect in every aspect. The whole questing system is a little bit messy, but I think that's not out of a design issue so much as the sheer amount of detail in all of the minor faction quests and things like that can lead it to be overwhelming by its very nature rather than by design. So going on from that, the combat is in theory great, and in execution probably my least favorite thing. As opposed to a lot of 4Xs where you get a you get sort of a backed out randomized RNG version of a battle whenever you battle. When you commit to combat in Endless Legend, you go into a sort of overworld system that then has a turn-based strategy game of a sort built into it to have your individual units combat the individual units of the people you are fighting. And you can have reinforcements and things like that if you're close to another army of yours or a city of yours or other allies or something like that. And in theory, it's a really excellent idea. If this had been executed perfectly, this would be without a doubt my favorite 4X. But it is very poorly implemented at the end of the day. The combat is imprecise at best. When you issue orders to your individual units, they hear your orders and get a gist and then kind of do whatever they think you probably wanted, but they don't take direct orders. So if I tell a unit to move to a particular hex, they may very well not move anywhere near that hex. And so imprecise is about the best term I could give for it. It's frankly maddening at some points, where you're watching the turns of combat play out, and you're going, if you had just fucking listened to me, you wouldn't be dead. And so watching that combat play out, or in some cases not play out, is somewhat frustrating at times. So that's probably the biggest black mark on this game for me personally. I appreciate what they attempted to do. I appreciate their, them trying to do something new in the 4X space, and in a lot of things they did very well, and in this one they did not. But let's move on from that a little bit. In terms of how you, in addition to this turn-based strategy system, there's also a whole RPG leveling and equipment system for not only your hero units that you can place in your armies or in your cities to give various boosts and be really good in combat, but there's equipment that you have to buy and upgrade and equip onto both your hero units and your regular units in order to get them ready for new ages of combat, contrary to something like Civ, where there's an extensive amount of different combat units you can get. Endless Legend has a fairly limited number of combat units. You don't upgrade units to new and better technologies every single technology tree boost or whatever. I'm not articulating that well, but you know what I mean. Instead, you buy better equipment that the technology tier allows you to get, and then you equip that onto your various characters, and you have to, be smart economically so that you can equip people. Otherwise, you're just throwing basically trash units at guys with, heavy-duty armor and big damaging weapons, and your battles start to go very poorly. And that's an interesting system. I'm kind of in a gray area on that one. I think it's another really interesting idea that is implemented not poorly, but not excellently either. I would like them to have taken a little more time to refine how it works, because more often than not, there's basically a single choice. There's a bunch of equipment you can choose from, and there's only one right choice. So if it didn't feel like it was taking up my time, and instead felt like a fun, oh, I really want to deck this person out to do 3 times as much damage but be really squishy or something like that. That level of depth just isn't quite there. But again, it's sort of a gray area for me. It's definitely necessary in replacement for the unit trees, but it's overly worked, I guess. Moving on to a sort of a different topic, the whole faction system is really interesting relative to something like Civ, where the Civ that you pick is not particularly important, besides a few buffs here and there and a unique unit or two. The faction that you pick in this game wholly dictates how you are going to play the game and the type of victory that you're going to aim for. Each of the factions is built from the ground up to be oriented towards a certain type of victory. And that's a really interesting idea, and I really enjoy that. It does, take away a little bit of the mystery, a little bit of the political scheming that you can do in something like Civ, where you don't really know what your enemy's up to. But whereas in this, oh, it's the necrophage. They're going out to conquer people, obviously, because it's the only thing they do and it's the only way they survive. So it does take a little bit of the surprise out, but I think it adds a lot of nuance and a lot of freshness again to the whole 4X genre. Unfortunately, a side effect of that is that the whole game is not particularly well balanced for all of the victory conditions to be equally viable and equally accessible. Some victory conditions are all but impossible if you're not a specific faction. Other victory conditions almost anyone can get as long as they're focused on them. I've forgotten some of the faction names at this point, but for example, playing as the science-oriented faction and trying to get the science victory, I have been beaten out by other civilizations in terms of science, and a lot of it is, I think, based on a single issue, which is if you are not aggressively expansionist, regardless of who you are, if you are not aggressively expansionist and willing to go to war, you are going to fall behind very quickly, almost universally in my experience. You can take a look at post-game maps, post-game graphs of performance and economic output and science output and things like that. And if you do not build your civilization up early on, your whole civilization will quickly collapse years down the line, or be beaten out purely on the basis of, well, they had one more city than me in turn 80, and that was the beginning of the end. And there's basically no way to mitigate those factors besides going on a conquering spree towards the end game, or really at any point. A lot of the victory conditions almost universally actually come down to who holds the most land and can exert the most force on their neighbors. So in terms of the victory conditions, that does also bother me quite a lot, that they are not all equally viable and that the game has not been fully balanced for that. Again, I really appreciate what they have tried to do here. The thought is brilliant. It's the execution that's a bit too flawed. Likewise, for faction-specific stuff, the various heroes that you can recruit or buy add a lot of nuance to both city building and combat. The the various skill trees that the individual units have are pretty detailed, more so than you'd ever expect, and can lead you, down a variety of paths depending on how you want to play the game. And again, they are oriented towards the faction-specific victory conditions, but again, it's all undone a little bit by the lack of balance. My final note on this, because I'm trying to wrap this up in a fairly reasonable amount of time without cutting myself off too much, is that I had a pretty crippling bug that frustrated me pretty badly. It's one of the few bugs I really ran into, and it's the only one that was a major issue, but man, is it a major issue. And it was, I played a number of multiplayer games with various friends, and in about 70% of my games, if we did not finish the game, the saves would have corruption issues. I don't fully understand exactly what's going on, and it's not an isolated incident by any means. This is an extensively complained about thing, both on the forums, on the Steam forums, on the game forums, on the developer forums, all of those things. And basically, it's unclear because we would check to make sure, before saving for the evening and signing off, we'd check all of the status indicators in the game that said everybody's turns are synced together, the save should be fine. We would save, we'd come back to it the next day and try and load it up, and there would be game-breaking desync, where either it wouldn't load at all and would just throw obtuse dev-only error messages at us, or we would be basically playing two separate games at the same time, where unit location did not match on our two screens. And this is even this is regardless of playing over internet, playing over LAN. We still had these problems no matter what, and we were never able to fix it. So if you're looking at it for a multiplayer game, it's a lot of fun to play multiplayer. Just don't bet on your saves working all the time. And that was pretty frustrating. It's pretty frustrating to lose 10 hours of game to a bug that I can't even identify. If it was something I could have, dug around in the system files and fixed myself, I probably wouldn't have held it against the game so much. But the fact that it's an ongoing problem that nobody has addressed, a little bit frustrating. But all in all, I really like the game. I think there's a lot of great things about it. That said, I don't think I'm going to play a whole lot more of it. Between the bugs, the victory condition balance issues, and the lack of fun in the combat, where honestly by the time I got really experienced with the game, I was just running all my battles automatically instead of having to do any of the combat, because they had any commands that I was issuing had about the same level of quality in their outcome as what the auto was doing for me. So just to save time, that was my solution. But those three things together really sort of put the nail in the coffin for me. I don't regret the time I spent with it. I think there's a lot of really amazing things in this game. And it's just a shame that it didn't have that little bit of extra polish for them to figure out exactly what it needed to make it just right. I am looking forward to Endless Space 2. Endless Space 1 I didn't play much at all of, although you can go check out the video I did of it with Colibacter and Red October on their channel, link in the description. Although I didn't play much or any of it, I am eager to see what they do with Endless Space 2, and to see whether maybe that's yet another refinement in the 4X family. And maybe one day we'll get Endless Legend 2, and maybe they'll have fixed all of my complaints with this game. But for now, unless somebody really, really wants to see the game, I don't think I'm going to pick it up too much more unless I have a random hankering for it. Anyway, I hope that wasn't too long. It's a bit of a long video, but I think the game deserves it. And it is the last one of the year, and frankly, I think this is the best version of this video I've recorded. So I hope you enjoyed. Thank you guys ever so much for sticking with me through this entire year of videos. It's been a blast making these. Sometimes a little stressful trying to get them out in time and, make sure I compensate for any time that I'm going to be away or anything like that. But I've had a really great time doing it, and I think I'm definitely going to continue it for another year unless something else comes up that interrupts my schedule too much to allow me to do it. And I guess we'll go from there. I'm hoping in season 2 I'll make some improvements to the way it's run. So that I can get my thoughts out perhaps a little more succinctly, a little more consistently, and have a little more professionalism in my reviews. But I make no promises. That may very well not happen. So thank you guys ever so much for continuing to watch these videos, continuing to be subscribed to my channel, because you are subscribed, right? And just, bearing with me, because I really enjoy making these videos, and I enjoy getting feedback from everyone. So I've been the Social Solipsist. Happy holidays, Happy New Year, and I will see you guys next time.